So So now let us move to the fundamental library. Mladen will explain how to create and drive an open source library successfully, reflecting the fundamental library, and discuss the benefits of fundamental library for SAP internally as well as externally for the customers and for our business partners. So Mladen, let's just jump right into it. You have the floor, please.
Thank you, Anjinkia. And yeah, I'm happy and I'm very thrilled to be part of the open source webinars. And the main reason for that is that, you know, we're open source library, and I'm sure most of you guys are open source enthusiasts. So it's really a great pleasure to meet you in the virtual connection. But still, it's a good opportunity for us to exchange ideas and thoughts with you. Before I start the presentation, I want to do two things. First, to ask you whether you already heard about fundamental library or not, and then this is where we can trigger a poll. This is also important for us to see how many people in the audience are familiar with fundamental library, and how many are not. So if they are not a lot, means we need to work on that direction. Let me just move the poll aside, and then while you guys voting, I just want to play a little video, just while you're thinking. Oh, I'm done with the presentation. You guys saw everything that I wanted to talk. No, this is a joke. Let me just move this away. You guys see my screen, I'm sure, right? So what I'll be focusing more is what the library is about and what it's not. And then this is the agenda, basically very short, and it's around the creation and existence of the fundamental library, why we are creating it, why is it needed, is it really needed, what exactly is the library, how are we doing this, and then who is part of the library. And I have one, how to say, goal for myself, that I hope by the end of the presentation, at least few people will come and check out our websites and also our GitHub repositories, and at least one person will open a PR into one of the repositories. If I achieve this at the end of the presentation, then I would consider it a successful presentation. I hope it's more than this, but let's get started. So why did we create the fundamental library in the first place? There's always a problem, right? That is arising, and then what's the solution of it? So I'm coming in an organization that first it was acquired by SAP, and also it became bigger as part of the CX line of business. At that time, it was Hybris, and even Hybris, as a smaller company, saw the issue of having multiple web applications that are not harmonized at all. And the issue is, like, you go to customers and you show your products, and they don't look alike. They don't behave the same way. And then, it's kind of a, it shows the, let's say, immaturity of your products. So then that time, Hybris realized that we need to move forward and we need to find something that it's more consistent. And then you may ask the question why the front end wasn't harmonized. The main reason is that still the leaders of Hybris believe that it should be led in a more startup way, where each team is responsible for everything. So they can pick the front end stack, they can pick the back end stack, as long as they can maintain everything. They own the whole end-to-end process. And because of that freedom, different teams they pick different frameworks on the back end, on the front end, and stuff like that. So this is where the problem come. And then what we started looking is like, okay, let's go on the technology level. What are we having now? And this is when Hybris was already part of the customer experience, where we had also companies acquired like Core Systems, Gigia. Then we have the marketing cloud, the sales cloud, the service cloud, Calidus. So looking at from the big picture, there were applications written in Angular, there are applications written in React. Some of them are using TypeScript, some of them, or a lot of them, are using Bootstrap, Vue, SAP UI5 for Marketing Cloud, for example. So it was a huge heterogeneous stacks in the CX. So our question was, okay, how can we achieve the harmonized user experience? How can we achieve it without forcing every team or all the teams to use certain front-end framework? We don't want, everybody just to follow one thing and that's it. We are in the open source where, along the time, new libraries are rising, competing with existing ones, and then becoming the leaders. And as all of those libraries, they're web, they're targeting browser and web applications, so all they're using CSS. Apart from the different life cycles, hooks and life cycles and languages and paradigms, they were all using CSS. Very simple, selector rules CSS. So this is basically how fundamental library was created. First, some of the libraries were created as an inner source, right? Before going out there, you need to see, is it really meaningful to create it? So we created as an inner source, and then we saw interesting teams within the CX organization, but also from other acquired companies like Concur, Ariba, Fieldglass. So because of that, we even shift from the inner source to open source. And then this is basically what fundamental library is. So we created a presentation layer, which is CSS and HTML, which target creating a consistent user experience. And this is at the same time when SAP started pushing the harmonization across the board. All the solutions somehow should be integrated, not only on the front end, but all these technology guidelines that are now available and mature enough. So we created the fundamental library styles, but it's not only CSS and HTML. With this, we're delivering the components that are Fiori 3, right? Consistent components. They are themable. So basically, you can switch from one SAP theme to another, or the customers, they can create their own theme using the theme designer. And last but not least, also the components are accessible. So when we talk about accessibility, it's a buzzword, but accessibility, basically there are things to be done in each level of the implementation. It starts with the design. So in this case, Fiori 3 has to be accessible, and the designers in SAP UX, they're doing this. So it goes to the, let's say, the CSS and HTML, it has to be accessible as well. Then it goes to the behavior and interaction JavaScript, and then go in the application side, and then further and further. So there's no single, let's say, piece of the stack that shouldn't be responsible for the accessibility. So how we achieve accessibility in fundamental styles is by trying to use as much as possible the semantic HTML elements like button, anchor, lists. By using this in your markup, you're getting the native support from the browsers. I mean, on top that they're performant, fast, and all that stuff, you also get features like accessibility. I mean, it doesn't stop there. We have to do extra steps to cover the other part of the accessibilities. But when you get the native support, it's much easier and it's better for the developers and also for the users, right? Because it's more performant. A little numbers, or before the numbers. So we created fundamental library styles, but we didn't stop there. So we went to see what are the most common frameworks or libraries that all these acquired companies in the CX space were using. And then obviously, they were using Angular, React, and Vue. I mean, the most common, the most popular front-end libraries and frameworks, apart from, the marketing cloud and some part of the service cloud using UI5. And this is why where we created also fundamental library for Angular as a separate library on top of fundamental library styles. We created fundamental library for React and for Vue, basically separating this in smaller libraries so it can be much faster to deliver a new component because it's much less requirement for you to make this component available. And all this Angular, React, and Vue, they're sharing the same styling, the same HTML. So instead of repeating it multiple times, it's one central place. And the advantage of this is that fundamental library styles can be used with any web framework, any web library. Even you can create your own web components. You can, in this case, you wouldn't need to worry about the styling in the HTML. You just follow fundamental styles and you can build your, let's say, web component if you want. A little numbers, since, we have now a couple of libraries around, we are reaching close to 40,000 NPM downloads per week in some weeks. We reached last week the unique contributors in all the libraries 100, I think maybe now over 100. Our Slack members are over 300. And then the current releases, including the release candidates, are over 3,300. This is in terms of our numbers. So the main contributors and the main stakeholders, I mean, they're more than this, but I mean, I just want to focus on the one that are, let's say, the biggest contributors are TNI, obviously, and central engineering and some other teams in the TNI. Then CX, obviously, as organically the library was created there. SAP Concur and SAP Ariba also, they are contributing and consuming the libraries. The other big difference here from any other library or frameworks or solution that we have, we are federatedly driven libraries. Federated means there's no top-down dictation what is going to be done. So each team can contribute whatever they need to use it, as long as they follow accessibility, Fiori 3, TIMI, and all the other stuff. But basically, they have equal share in the driving seat, let's say. And that's the key part of the success of fundamental library. So basically, anybody who wants to be a contributor is treated as a person or a member on the driving seat or on the board of the making the decisions in fundamental library. And the people coming and contributing are growing up, which is it's a good thing. Good not only for us, but it's good for the company that more and more teams. Even though they are coming from different acquisition history, they're coming together, they're helping each other without being forced, to change their framework. So before going to the end of the questions and answers, I also want to walk you through a little bit with our libraries. Very, very quick walkthrough. So this is our website. At the moment, you will see we have fundamental library styles. Angular, React, and Vue. There are more coming. Even I think they're already published. There is fundamental tools. Basically, it's a layer built for in case you want to consume a backend. So as you see, there are more and more different teams with different innovative ideas coming in the ecosystem of fundamental library. But let me just quickly show you a few examples. So we can see in fundamental styles and then fundamental Angular as well similar components. So we have at the moment components basic, like let's say, I mean button, right? And the buttons, they look exactly like UI5. Um, we have simple components like that, and then we have components like even very specific to SAP, like product switch, right? Product switch, it is related with the technology guideline number 14. And this is, basically here you see how they look like. And then if you want to see the behavior, we can go in Angular, for example, and then let's take example of the button. As I said, the button itself is just a native. I can just show it in the console. You see, it's just a button, simple as is. Even if it's an Angular, that's it. This is a big advantage, when you want to focus on the performance libraries. Minimize the footprint of what you're bringing. I mean, this is not applicable for all the components, but for the basic components, we're trying to really limit the footprint on our side. Another thing that we are really incorporating in the culture of fundamental library is the openness. Not only just writing components, but see what we can reuse out there that it's really successful or it's a de facto standard of everybody else. And this one example, it's like, if you take the calendar as a component, calendar is just, let's say, it's around the dates. You can have a month, years, list of months. But the important part is when it comes to, if you guys have front-end experience, this is one of the difficulties of handling different languages, different localizations, different formats, all that stuff. It requires a lot of time and effort. So we asked ourselves, do we really want to reinvent the wheel? Or can we reuse something that it's already mature? All the front-end developers, or most of them from the open world, it's embracing. And then this is where you can see how you can use Moment.js alongside with all of the 3 libraries. And then with few lines of code, basically, you can import the specific languages that you want to use, and then link them with our library. You see 4 lines of code, then you can achieve smooth localization in, I think Moment.js supports 60 some languages or maybe more. With few lines of code, you can bring any language. So we don't store this on our library. We are using already an existing one. Another simple example before I open the stage for question is drag and drop. Again, for front-end developers, supporting drag and drop natively by us, it's enormous work because of many things. Different browser support, older browser support, and many issues. So we explore the option of using the Angular CDK. It's a Google famous library that helps you building your component library. So with few lines of code, we can come and check. You can achieve drag and drop smoothly working everywhere. I mean, I think that's it. We can just open the stage for questions. But yeah, thank you guys for listening, and I hope I convince somebody to come and contribute to us.
Thank you very much, Mladen, for this enlightening presentation. We already have quite a few questions coming in. Oh, one of them is from Matthias. He asks, how many non-SAP contributors do you have? Do you know that?
I didn't count. I don't. I didn't keep track. The library that has the most um, PRs from even within the company or outside of the company, it's fundamental React. So this is basically, you can see which framework, it's kind of the one that it's very active out there. So I guess in React, maybe we had from 10, 20 different people, maybe, I'm not sure, but the numbers are good and coming.
Okay. The next one is from Christian. So today, they also integrated the UI5 web component from the open source UI5 web component, and they had this implementation in React, Angular, and in Vue.js. Is there an alignment between UI5 web components and fundamentals to develop the same components and to have the same UI consistency?
Well, yes. First, yes and yes. So we are talking with the folks from SAP UI5 for quite some time. You know, at the end of the day, you know, the solutions that are created from SAP, either I'll be using SAP UI5 or let's say Angular from Angular React View. But when you sell to the customers different solutions, they don't care what is the framework underneath. They want to see everything that looks the same. So the very first step that we've done last year is that we're sharing the same design. We're sharing the same visual design, and also we are sharing the same interaction design. We are also aligning in the same way with the theme designer. We pushed also theme designer to create an open source library where they're maintaining the color names and the color values for different themes. So this is also something that both or like all the libraries are using as well. So yes.
Okay. There's another question from Maxine.
Mm-hmm.
He did some research before, and he's having a hard time to see the difference between UI5 web components and fundamental library. I mean, he agrees that there could be some differences in terms of how they are built and how they perform. But from a developer perspective, he built an app using React, and he could clearly see the same results. He has also given two links to where we import the dialog from UI5 web components and also the dialog from the fundamental components. So his question then boils down to what should I select and where is the difference between the two projects and why SAP does not merge the efforts or give a clear guidance on that?
That's a very good question. Not just because I want to please Maxim, it's that even we ask ourselves the same thing. So one thing that I can share as a link, you can guys take a look further, and look, we are open for further discussions. So this is, again, you can go to the open source SAP, and out in the featured in the featured content, there is a featured blog that we wrote jointly with the folks from UI5. So we talk a little bit deeper about what fundamental library is and what web components are, and then, you know, what are the next steps and stuff like that. That's one thing. But I don't want just to redirect you guys to the website, to the blog. I can try to answer it quickly. So one thing is, like, imagine that you have an existing multiple web applications. Such a case like in Fieldglass, that you don't want to migrate the current solutions to any like you want to minimize the refactoring effort, but you still to provide consistent user experience. So in that case, you can directly use fundamental styles. You can take the styles and put it in your application, and then it will look like Fiori 3, and it's themable. This is something similar that not only Fieldglass is doing, but Fieldglass are one of the pioneers using fundamental styles back in March last year. So in this case, you don't add additional, let's say, libraries, overhead. It's just the CSS, right? So this is the case where you can use fundamental library styles. You know, this is the best way. Other ways is like, and this is an answer that can be confirmed by all the all the acquired companies that they picked fundamental libraries, because they also explore the options of web components. But for them, they want to have the control. Let's say if you have a composite complicated component, you want to have the freedom of modify the template inside to optimize it for certain cases. So in this case, you would go with, for example, fundamental React. Plus, let's take the example. If you're using SAP UI 5, I doubt that for now you're going to pick the web components. You're going to be staying with SAP UI 5. But if you have other applications, you need to pick a framework, even if you go with web components, that maintains the whole applications in terms of lifecycle, different features. So if you pick React, then using natively React applications, it's been proven that it's much faster. Plus also web components, I mean, maybe this is the future. They don't support natively IE11, right? They have polyfills, but we have, like examples in Concur where they have to support IE11 as their maybe customer base is like 40–50% of that. And we know IE11 engine, it's quite slow in general. And everything is slow. Adding extra, overhead with the polyfills just for the web component, it could be overkill, right? So in these cases also you can pick fundamental React native. Was a bit too long answer.
Well, I hope it answers the question. So another question is from Hoika. So he's currently working with fundamental view, which is still based on the deprecated Fury fundamentals. So he's hoping for a migration to fundamental library styles, but not really confident when this will happen. So is there any alignment between the maintainers of the fundamental library styles and the framework specific implementation for Angular, React, and Vue, or are all projects managed independently? Is there a feature parity? Is there a goal? Do you have any idea about this?
There is alignment between all the libraries. We make decisions, or we discussed, for example, using Popper.js for handling the popover, Moment.js, and stuff like that. There is alignment. But as I said, this is an open source library, right? And then the direction everything goes depend on the stakeholders and contributors. So one example is in Angular. We're working with Ariba. Basically, the library has core layer of components and then platform layer of components, where we're hiding more freedom, but giving more, more metadata-driven UI. So all this is shaped based on the contribution. So that's also the stage I want to use the opportunity to say that it's open for everybody to come and help us. So there will be discrepancy between the libraries because of this reason.
Maybe we just have time for one more question from Arthur. So I need to implement a resource scheduling solution with timelines. So is there any component that can help him? So is there any component in the library that can help?
Maybe Arthur can come and talk to us directly, and we can discuss, what's our, roadmap and which component and where, so we can go in the details. I think it's fair this way, right?
Okay. So there is one more question, but I think we will not be able to get to that because we're already on time now. So the question which is not answered, we will copy it, we'll put it in a document, and then Mladen will answer it afterwards, and we will upload it onto our Jam page. So the link for the Jam page is shared by Ulrika in the chat. So I think that's it. That brings us to a stop today. Thank you very much for all the great questions. And as our time has come to an end, I would like to thank again to all